To belt or not to belt. Putting a belt over a loose-fitting dress, a boxy blazer, an oversized cardigan can be a very simple and effective way to obtain more of an hourglass shape. Belting an outfit can have some potential downsides. And now this is a case-by-case thing. It's not a generalization at all. Every garment is unique. It has its own fabric, and different fabrics behave differently. Let's assume that you're working with something that does not have any shape built into it. So it's basically just a tube of fabric. So by belting it, what you're doing essentially is you're strangling that tube of fabric. And by strangling it, you're creating lots of different folds. And now, of course, how many folds and what these folds look like are going to depend on the type of fabric, how thin, how malleable it is, how much excess fabric there is. So there are many variables here. But have you ever had the experience, and I bet you have, of belting something and you're constantly fiddling with the fabric, you're rearranging it here and there, to the right, to the left, trying to get it to not look so asymmetric. You decide to pull some fabric up so that you don't have weird folds under the belt, but then now you have too much fabric over the belt. So all of this is happening because that garment wasn't really designed to taper, and so you're just trying to force it, you know? Sometimes it works, sometimes it's a little awkward, and I trust that you can observe this for yourself and trust your intuition and realize when you are fighting a losing battle. Something that's very frustrating is that this happens even with the belts that come with the garments themselves. A lot of times they're made from the same fabric, the same material as the belt. And yet, because the design doesn't really allow for any tapering, it is lazy design, it is cost-cutting. Moving forward, this is something that I really want to avoid. Do you see this coat? I really like the style, I like the color, I like the print, but it is quite boxy. Now, it came with a belt of its own, made from the same material as the rest of the garment. But I can't help but feel this would look so much nicer had the coat been designed so that it tapered at the waist, and then the belt could be thrown there optionally as an added decorative element, but without having to force the fabric into place. Now here's an example of an outfit that already has a well-defined waist. Now if I put the belt on top of the dress, it's not really fighting against the material because there isn't a lot of leftover fabric that it needs to fold and force into place. So another potential issue is that when you just throw on a belt like that, it cuts your torso in half, it shortens it, and if you're a busty woman, you might feel as though now your upper half is just boobs. And I personally would rather have my rather long torso. I do have somewhat of a long torso. I want that elongation to be properly represented and not broken in half. A way around this could be to use a thicker belt, because a thicker belt creates this area, this surface around your abdomen to show that yes, you do have an abdomen. You didn't just start growing legs right under the bust line, so to speak. It is as though the thicker belt were acting a bit like a corset. It's giving you some shape, some structure. And now, of course, when you take an actual belt, not that little piece of fabric that came with the garment, but you put an actual belt, like a leather belt, it's quite a statement. It tends to draw in a lot of attention, so something you want to be a little bit mindful of, or very mindful of, depending on your aesthetic preferences, whether you lean more minimalist or you like your look to be more done up. Should you maybe consider editing what else you're adding to that look? How many accessories are you wearing? Is the rest of your outfit going to be more minimalist? Is it going to be a little more laid back so that it doesn't look like you're putting too much of an effort into it? There's no right or wrong here. It's just about understanding that you have added another very attention-grabbing accessory, right? And you also want to be thinking about whether that belt actually feels earned, whether it feels justified. So do you remember in the 2000s when people were just being so random with belts, putting belts over simple tank tops, jersey tops, things like that? Clothes that were super, super casual that didn't need a belt, and yet that belt was just there. I think the issue here is that those clothes are too casual to necessitate a belt. But do consider that when you don't belt things, when you let a maxi coat hang loose, when you wear a blazer open, when you wear a bohemian outfit that doesn't need any cinching, it tends to look very laid back, very relaxed. So if this is something that you prioritize, you might want to go in that direction instead. Sometimes when you have a belt over a coat or a blazer, the issue is that, let's say it's cold outside, but then you meet your friends for lunch. You have to remove that belt. What are you going to do with that belt? Are you going to put it in a purse? What if it's a very thick belt? Is there room in your purse for that belt? The act of putting a belt on and off, it feels kind of private, not in terms of modesty, but why is this person, removing a belt in public? There's just something about it that feels a little unnatural to me. And I'll give you here a very good example. I have this coat in this shape of a cape, and it came with this belt that loops, half of it is hidden in the interior and half of it is out, and then you see the belt only in the front. And this looks really elegant, really beautiful, but 99% of the time I just wear this cape without the belt, removing and putting that. It's a little tricky, and doing that in public, it's a little awkward, don't you think? I think it's a little awkward. So this is another thing that for me personally is a bit of a barrier as far as the whole belting an outfit. Now, if you're belting a dress, something that you don't intend on removing, then it's fine. But if you have a piece of outerwear or a jacket, a blazer, something like that, that at some point you might want to remove so you don't feel hot, I do think that it's kind of impractical unless you know for sure you're going to be outdoors and in the cold the whole time. But I gotta say, in doing this video, and I was looking at images on Pinterest, and a lot of them, it's, someone wearing a belt, a thick belt, where a skirt and a blouse meet. And this sparked something in me because I've been very unhappy with how tucking my blouses under my midi skirts, how it kind of looks a little unpolished. There's just a lot of fabric there that's kind of loose, and even with a skirt like this one, that it has an elasticated waistband, but it's not one of those really like scrunchy looking elasticated waistbands. It's actually rather flat. There's a seam running right through it that keeps it rather neat. Still, with the blouse, it looks a little unstructured, a little messy, and that's when I realized, why not just throw a belt over that so that I have a little structure, I have a little shape, and again, I create that little space in the abdomen area so that it doesn't look like my torso has been compressed so much. So this is something that I definitely want to do more in the future. So let's talk about construction and how we can find garments that already have a nice shape built into them and which are less likely to feel as though they're cutting our bodies in half if this is something that you care about. So a piece of fabric is flat. It is two-dimensional, but it can fold, it can bend. So you take two pieces of fabric, you sew them at the sides. Now you have something that is a tube, right? To follow curves, fabric either needs to be elastic or it needs to be shaped, pinched or folded or pleated, like origami, so that garments do not just fall as flat pieces of fabric laying over our bodies, but that they actually have a three-dimensional shape, a sculpted shape. So we have darts, which are when you pinch a piece of that fabric, a small little triangular section, and you pinch it and you remove that excess fabric, and that allows you to shape the garment around the bust, around curves. You also have princess seams. A princess seam usually runs from the shoulder or the armhole all the way down to the hem, and this is really great for tailored looks when you want them to conform to the curves of your body. And you sometimes find garments that have these corset-like seams, panels, and this is also a very interesting, elegant solution. Another way to add shape to a garment is to piece together panels of fabric so that the angles can help create that contour. And here is a coat from Etro that I found that has this really interesting solution of taking pleats and then sewing them together underneath the bust line. And you can see that with these techniques, you can just have a continuous elongated silhouette if that is your preference. And it's a very elegant solution also because you don't have to fight against the fabric. It's not creasing, it's not being folded and shaped against its will. And on a personal note, I realized how much I've been missing this sort of thing in my wardrobe, right? I don't have tons of examples to show from my own wardrobe because I live in France and there's a culture here of clothes not really being the most adapted to curves. But earlier this year, I went to visit my family in Brazil, and we do actually have a lot of clothes that have darts and princess seams and things of this nature. Brazilian women are oftentimes on the curvy side, and they do like clothes that show off their figure, so it's actually very common to find things like this. I have backed myself into a corner with clothes that are very bohemian and oversized, and as much as I like these things, it would be nice to also have the option to not have to go that route. So, should you belt your outfits? The conclusion here is not that you shouldn't do it, and I think there's so many examples of clothes with belts on them that I think look amazing. The takeaway is for you to understand when something is not working and why it is not working, and to come out of this with more appreciation for how things are constructed and what to look for if you are someone who likes to have waist definition, okay? Then this is definitely something that you need to add to your repertoire. And next time when you're shopping and you see an outfit that is sold with its own belt, is that belt well made? Does the fabric actually behave nicely when you belt it? Is it really adding something? Is it the cherry on top of the ice cream that makes that look feel special? Or was it just lazy design and cost cutting? If you enjoy this content, make sure to subscribe and like, help a small channel out, and this way YouTube knows to suggest my content to you in the future, because I have so many thoughts on what it means to wear something that fits you well, not body typing, but things that actually fit and respect the shape of your body. And I'll see you soon.